Hi, I'm Ben, and I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know to use Spacedrift. I'll show you how fun, simple, and easy it is to do. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us using the links in the description below, or you can simply email us at jump@spacedrift.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So I want to communicate something, and that's why I'm using Spacedrift. I don't want to use 3D, paper, PowerPoint, or a giant whiteboard. I want to communicate something that happens over time. Here we go. When you log into Spacedrift, you'll be taken to the project dashboard. You won't see any projects here if this is your first time, but this is where you'll be able to find every Spacedrift you've created or been added to as a collaborator. Press the Create Project button to create a new Spacedrift from scratch. Start by giving your project a name. For the sake of this example, I'm going to call mine Brower Route, and use this project to showcase a famous 17th century sailing route. You can change this later if you aren't sure what you want to start with, but we'll keep this one for now. Next, you can choose a theme here, which will give you images and icons relevant to your needs. Next, we set a background which gives context to your scenario. In this case, let's pick creative, because we're getting creative. Setting your background or space helps people understand where your scene takes place. You can draw one yourself using the Paint Background feature, upload an existing image, use one of ours, or even use the Maps feature to select a real-world location. If you prefer to start building your scene without a background, simply select blank. There's a cool world map in the suggested backgrounds, so let's use this one for our example. It's time to talk about time. The customizable timeline is one of Spacedrift's most powerful features. It allows you to select a time frame that will determine how time will pass in your scene. If you know how long your scene will take, or if you know how you'd like to measure time, then select one of our options, or create your own unit of time measurement. If you're putting together a schedule, routine, or event plan where people need to be in specific places at specific times of the day, you might instead want to use the time clock. Steps can be used to visually explain sequences of events, like this happens before this, and before this. Easy. If none of these time frame options suit your scene, you can set a custom time frame and duration for your scene, or just skip this step altogether and adjust your time frame later on. In this instance, let's use the custom option and set it to months, since this best fits the project that we're making. Once you've selected your time frame, you'll be taken to the play space. This is where you'll build your scene. In every Spacedrift, you can have multiple scenes, like chapters in a book, and you can connect them together. But we'll show you how you do this later. Now, there are 5 main elements that make up any Spacedrift scene. First off, we have the background, which you can adjust or add to by pressing the Edit Space button in the sidebar. Second, we have the story, which can be accessed by pressing the blue story button. You can add text in the story tab to describe or explain what's happening throughout your scene. You can add time codes, as well as links, videos, images, or notes that add detail, context, or clarity. The third thing is comments, which can be used to provide information that will show up at a specific time and place within your scene. The fourth thing we have is sounds, which you can upload or record and set to play at any stage throughout your scene in the sound tab. And last but definitely not least, we have pins. Pins are customizable images that can move throughout your scene using the movement tab. Now, pins are perhaps the most important element of any Spacedrift scene because the way they move and interact is what brings your idea to life. Adding a pin to your play space is easy. When you select Add Pin from the sidebar, you'll be able to search our extensive pin library for something relevant to your scene. Let's look up boat and select one of these sailing boats since it looks the most fitting for our 17th century vibe. If you had your own or you want to insert a photo from the real world, you could do that too by clicking the Build Your Own Pin button. You can save your pins in favorites for easy access if you have a big project. Once you've selected or created your first pin, it will appear in your play space, and you'll be able to adjust it in various ways. Press and drag to move your pin, and use the resize or rotate buttons to make it fit nicely on top of your background. Open the pin menu to rename your pin, flip it horizontally or vertically, send it behind or in front of your other pins, or to copy it, duplicate it, or delete it. A pin can also be hidden if you aren't ready for it to appear in your scene just yet. And you can make a pin move by selecting it and pressing the Add Movement button. There are 3 types of movements you can apply to a pin in Spacedrift. First, you can select a pin and press Add Path to make it move from one point to another in a straight line. Drag the pin from its start point to its end point and release it to create a path. Let's start this boat on its journey and create its first path. However, if your pin needs to move from A to B, but you don't want it to move in a straight line, select Draw Path instead for a curvy line. A drawn path can be as short or as long as you like, and can make paths look smoother and more natural. Now let's continue the journey of our boat with a curved path. For longer, more complicated movements, it may be easier to add a route instead. Think of routes as a combination of smaller, straight paths. Instead of moving your pin from A to B using add path, adding a route means you can make your pin move from A to B to C to D all in one motion. And now we can finish off the journey with this route. This specific route was the original route taken to pick up spices from Jakarta and bring them to the Dutch East Indies. Let's make a quick second route just to once again highlight how it's done, and also show you the Brouwer route, a trade route that helped reduce the time it took to take this journey from 12 months down to 6 months. The Brouwer route took advantage of strong westerly winds to get to Jakarta even faster. Already we can see how you can tell a story, teach a concept, or communicate an idea using the tools of Spacedrift. Now that our pin has its first movement, we're going to open the movement tab at the bottom of our play space to adjust its speed. If you've used video editing software in the past, the movement tab might look familiar. On the left-hand side of the tab, you'll see a list of all the pins you've assigned movement to so far, and at the top of the tab, you'll see the timeline you set earlier. You can press and drag each movement and move it along your timeline to adjust when the movement takes place, or drag the movement from the edges to adjust its start and end time. Movements will automatically adjust their speed based on where they are on your timeline. Pins with larger movements on your timeline will move slower than pins completing the same movement over a shorter period of time. As you can see here, one path represents the 6-month journey and the other path represents the 12-month journey. Now we can link this play space and the movement we've created to a written script so that it's easy to communicate the story that we want to tell in detail. Let's open up the script tab on the right-hand side and write out what's happening in the play space. Now that we've written that information, let's scroll to the start of the timeline and click on the Set Timecode button. This will create a time code, and when you click on it, it'll bring you to that point in the Spacedrift. Let's make another one for the end of the sailing journey. So we'll move the timeline to the end, click Set Timecode, and put some text with it to describe what's happening. And if you need to, you can edit the timecode manually as well. So as you can see, clicking on the timecode will take you to that part of the project. Once you've added your pins, plotted their movement, written your story, and added any necessary comments or sounds, it's time to hit the play button at the bottom of your play space to watch your scene come to life. Now the full story of the old route versus the Brouwer route can be easily communicated with this Spacedrift. If you want to see a fully finished version of this Spacedrift, scan the QR code or click the link below. There are plenty more advanced skills to learn along the way, including tagging pins in your story and creating portals that connect your scenes together. This is really helpful if you're using Spacedrift to communicate a non-linear story. This is a big picture view of how you can help visualize the layout of your story so that people you send your Spacedrift to can follow along and see how all your scenes are connected. The thumbnails of your scene can also be edited here. To see this big picture view, you can access it via the drop-down or clicking here. And that's it. Easy. That's all you need to know to be able to build a Spacedrift. If you need help, again, just contact us. For more handy guides, check out the knowledge base section of our website, or visit our YouTube channel to access a range of short explainer videos. Remember, there is no wrong way to make a Spacedrift. Your imagination is the limit. Now, if you want to send someone a Spacedrift, you can. If you want other people to jump in and work on your Spacedrift with you, you can. If you want people to be able to access your Spacedrift from the real world, you can. To get your Spacedrift out there, just go to Share and either invite collaborators to work on your project with you, or send a link, QR code, or you can embed your Spacedrift in a website. Thanks for watching. Never be misunderstood again with Spacedrift.